Hello, welcome back to my channel. I got a little ColourPop order in the mail. I bought the Sage the Day palette and I was looking at it and I realized that it had some similarities to a palette that I already had. So do I need to purchase this? I don't know. So I'm going to do a review of this, and we're also going to compare it to the child palette to see if you have this already. Do you need this? And that kind of thing. So I'm going to do some comparison swatches, and then I will swatch the rest of this palette. We'll do an eye look with each using similar colors. And yeah, we'll see how good this one is. And also, if you own the child palette, do you need the Sage the Day palette? If that sounds interesting, stick around. We're going to jump into it. So yeah, I did a small order. I got this palette, and I got the bundle with the two Super Shock shadows that were part of the bundle. There's a green one and a gold, and I can swatch those and compare these with shades in the child also if you're interested. I added on like the Fozzie Super Shock and the Fozzie glowing lip from the holiday collection, and then like a neutral blush, just so I could get some free shipping because there were some like discounted items I'd been looking at. But the main reason I placed the order was because I liked this. I'm going to open it up. It has like a duochrome, and that's really what drew me in, was like the pretty duochrome. And then when I got this in the mail just now, I was like, this kind of looks familiar. So did I need to purchase this? Probably not, but I am going to do comparison swatches. And then, like I said, in the intro, I will swatch out the rest of the palette so you can see the additional colors. And then if there's anything similar to the Super Shocks, I'll put those, from this palette. I'll put those with the swatches. If not, we'll just swatch the Super Shocks below, and then we'll do an eye look. I will do a similar look on both eyes, one with each palette, so you can see tones. Like, it's a tonal thing, is from first glance. I haven't done the swatches yet, so I don't know, but yeah, that's where we're going. Okay, so let's get into the swatches. Okay, so I've got the palettes. The Sage palette's right here. The child palette is right here. I'm gonna try and swatch up in here. I do have a tattoo on my arm. Let's open the Super Shocks, and I will set them next to this one. I'm gonna say doesn't look similar, but this one in Fringe possibly could. But let's get into the swatches. So first, from Sage the Day, we've got Lit Vibes, and this is just on bare skin. This one also looks like a duochrome. It kind of shifts from a white to a green. And then from the child, we have Precious Cargo, which has more of a gold shift and not so much straight green. And then we've got Keep Calm from the Sage palette, and I'm going in a few times because this is such a light palette, building the color up, so it is buildable. And then from the child, we have Baby Face, which is the center shade, so you can see they are similar. This one's a little more cool toned. Then we've got this Retreat Me shade from the Sage palette. Which also kind of looks a little bit shifty. And then the comparable shade would be Sipping Soup. So you can see definitely more olive. Let's see, on the browns, we have Intuition from the Sage palette. And I just want to make sure we get that built up so that you can really... Those, I think, are probably the two closest Sage to the Sage palette. This one's got a little more brown in it. And then I'm going to try and turn. And we've got a dark brown in Manifest. From the child, it's Droid Protocol. So this one's a little bit warmer, but very, very close. And that seems to be about it. So the only shades that we didn't swatch are Tree of Life from the Sage palette, and then Nature Bay, which is the really pretty, like super shifty, like duochrome that's like brown. It's definitely got a brown base, but it shifts to a green. And Sips Tea, I don't believe that we swatched, which is the super light, like almost minty color. I don't own Mint to Be, so that could be a shade comparable to that. And then let's swatch. I'm gonna put this one in Fringe near the top because it looks kind of in this area. This is the one from the Child palette. This is the one from the Sage palette in Lit Vibes, and then this is the Super Shock. And then we'll just do the other Super Shock up here, the green one in Corsage. These just looked really pretty, so I just did the bundle so you can see it. Those ones are all kind of similar. So that there you have it for the swatches. I am just priming with the Gerard Clean Canvas. This is a wetter primer, and you could use concealer if you didn't want to buy this specific primer. I really like this primer. I actually ordered another one because mine's gotten pretty low, but you don't need a bunch. I kind of go into the lid, and we'll put, if I need to dip into the pot, I'll put some on my brush and then dip into the lid because you don't need very much. And then I'm just gonna blend this out. And I have a towel in my lap, so I just wiped a little bit. I got too much on the brush. Like I said, it's a very wet base, so it's really the shadows are really gonna stick. It's a wetter base is gonna give you more impact. The only downfall to using a wetter base, like if you wanted to just use unset concealer, it would do the same thing, because you can use this as concealer if you get a shade. They have a couple different shades. If you get one that works, blending can take a little more time, but you're going to get the most pigment payoff. That's the only benefit to using a wet base. Okay, and then I'm going to get out my NYX glitter primer because I use that for every shimmer. So we're going to get a brush, and I'm going to get a couple ready. I'm going to get out my Sigma E25 and then maybe this Morphe 518, this smaller Morphe. It's part of the Jeffree Star JS12. Maybe this Lavish tapered blending. I'm going to do a little bit of a halo eye, I think. And then my favorite for the lid, let's see, is a Morphe M107-2. I need to probably buy another one of these in case the company goes out of business. And then I love the Jessup Detailer shader for under the eyes because I can blend out with it. Okay, so I got that out. A lot of times I will start, I don't know what this is. This is a Lexi 121 mini tapered. I'm gonna take this, clean it off, and we're gonna go into the dark brown. And I'm probably gonna use the same brushes for both, and I will wipe off. Well, this will be the Star Wars palette. This will be the Sage palette. So Droid Protocol is the dark brown. A lot of times, there's a few YouTubers that I watch that do looks from light to dark, and I've started doing that lately. And once you start working from light to dark, it's hard to go back, but you're also going to get the most pigment from whatever shadow you start with because it's going directly onto the base. And again, this is Droid Protocol. It's the darkest brown in the palette. I do have hooded eyes, so if you're watching and you like see me kind of open, see how there's a space, my eyes, it's not the shadow. And a lot of times I'll go in with this little smudger brush that I'm going to use on the lower lash line to kind of, my eyes are small too, so sometimes getting things started on the inner part when I do halo eyes is tricky. So I wiped the brush off and I'm just going over the edge so that we can put on like a green. Okay, so I cleaned the brush off. The closest shade is going to be the Manifest shade, which is not the deepest shade in the Sage palette. It's a little more of a cool toned brown, and there is one shade deeper called Smudge Me. So you can see like tonal, I think this one's a hair darker, so I may go in with a little bit of that Smudge Me shade on my small little tapered brush here that's I'm holding. I'm going to go over the edges really quick because I feel like this one has more, just a hair more depth. So I'm going to go into Smudge Me and I'm going to put that just on top, just in the outermost parts of these two. And then I cleaned the smudger brush off, so there's no additional product, and I'm just going to blend that into the other shade. So the nice thing with that shade from the Child palette is you're going to get the depth straight away, whereas if you don't want as much depth, you do have the one extra brown shade in the Sage palette, which is the mid-tone is what we started with. And I'm just going over the edges again. Okay. So we're going to go mid-level green. So that same little blending brush, it's Babyface, which is the center shade on the Child palette. I'm placing that on the green, or on the green on the brown. And then I'm going to drag that through the crease. And we're going to do the same thing on this side. It's directly on the brown. Just looking, there is a mid-tone shade similar in the Sage palette in Keep Calm, which we swatched. But you don't have anything lighter in the Child palette. This is the lightest green shade. So I'm going to go in with Little Frog, which is a shade from the Child palette that's got, it's the matte shade with glitter. And I'm going to run that into the crease. And then we'll run that Sage color back through just to get a little more green in there. Okay, cleaned the brush off, so we're going to go into Keep Calm, and we're going to do the same thing. And we do have a lighter green than this. I will say these are a little kick-uppy. They're not terrible. But I feel like this is a little more kick-uppy than the Child palette. I'm going to say the Child palette is more green. I feel like you've got some more browns to work with in the Sage palette. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 shimmers in the Sage palette, and there's 4 shimmers and then that shade that we just used, the sequin shade. So I'm going into just the lightest shade now in the Sage palette. So you can see we're close. Like the crease is a little bit darker because we have that extra like darker green shade here, whereas we don't have a super dark green shade from the other palette. But these are definitely palettes, if you're like me and you ended up getting both of them, you could definitely use them together because there is a light shade that the other one doesn't have. Okay. So to highlight under the brow, I'm just going to use that fluffy Morphe brush, and I'm going to use Precious Cargo from the Child palette. And I like a shimmery brow bone. Not everybody does. And then Lit Vibes from the Sage palette. And then for the center, we're gonna do, let me put some glitter glue on. In the middle here, and I'm gonna drag it over the brown because we'll have to blend it out. We're gonna put some on both sides here. Okay, and I use glitter glue with every shadow. You can spray your brush if you don't want to use a glitter glue. So the shades that are comparable is going to be Sipping Soup from the Child palette. It's the mid-toned, it's the green, like truly green shimmer in the palette. And on me, this is kind of like a faux cut crease because it's where my eye starts to sink in. And the Sage palette, it's Retreat Me. Okay, are these the exact same shade? No, they're not, but you can see we've achieved a similar look. Now that's kind of where the similarities stop. So on the Child side, I'm going to go in with, I think it's called the Force. It's the more goldy one. We're going to put some of this on the outer parts because we're having to blend into that brown a little bit. And then I'm going to take Right Hand Mondo just on the brush, and I'm just going to tap this in the center just to lighten that up just a bit. Okay, so that's the top pretty much done on this side. So in the Sage palette, and I can hold that up now that we're done with the Child palette, I'm going to go into the Tree of Life, this deeper. This is what we have in the center of the crease right here. So I'm going to go into this one. And it's a green, it's not a gold. So that's going to be our blending shade. It's kind of a mossy green. Olivey green kind of. Okay. And then we used the lightest shade. I kind of want to see what this duochrome does down the center. So we're going to go in with this one. That's going to give us more of a, so we definitely have a little bit darker of an eye versus, because this is the shade that I took down the center of the Child. So we have this shade and this shade, and then I went down the middle with this. So there's some similarities. You can get a similar look, but they're not identical by any means. So we're going to leave it with that, and I'm going to do the lower lash line. On the Sage side, I lost my little, there it is. I'm going to go in with Smudge Me, which is the darkest brown. towards the outer part here. And I like this brush because it's small enough and skinny enough that you can kind of place the shadow, but it is good for smudging too, so you can blend out. And then I'm going to go in with Manifest, which is also a matte with a little bit of gold shimmer in it, but that shimmer is not going to stay once you blend it out. And then I'm actually going to go in with Keep Calm on a fluffier brush. Probably this small one. Now, I didn't use all the brushes that I pulled out. I just pulled out some that I've been using lately. And then for inner corner, we'll use this Lit Vibe shade again, which is what went under the brow from this palette. Okay. So I'm going to hold up the child palette so you can see. So in the center, just to recap, we have this shade in the middle, and then we use the gold to do the edges. I took a little bit of this down the center, so that's where that light is coming from. This is under the brow bone, so we're going to take, again, the brown in Droid Protocol. And then we'll go into maybe Float Your Boat. I'm going to say, I think the pigmentation might be a little bit better on some of these than in the Sage palette, but they usually do a good job with the Star Wars collabs. And then I'm just going to take some of Little Frog. It's the Sequence shade. Now, again, that shimmer is not going to stay because look how pigmented. I feel like it's definitely a little more pigmented. And I can dip in more. You can build this side up to the level of this, but I do appreciate that, like, the Star Wars palettes are all, like, same quality, really, really good, impactful. Okay. So there we have it. So I am going to put maybe just a little bit of mascara on, and we can discuss. I didn't end up putting any mascara on because I'm going to take this off after. But I did put on a little bit of the glowing lip in Warm Up Guy, the Fozzie one. Let's talk about the palettes. Now, for me, there's enough differences, and we'll open them up and you can see them side by side one more time. There's enough differences for me that I don't mind having both. I do think they play well together, so you could definitely use them together, but you can see you can get a similar vibe. There's enough shades that are similar. If you like those shades, you don't need both, but like I said, there's enough differences for me that I'm not mad now that I bought it. I will say I was panicking a little bit when I opened it in the mail, because off first glance it does look very, very similar. Like I said, the undertones are different. You've got, you know, I think an extra light green shade that helps with blending, and then you've got a deeper brown, so you can take this palette, I think, a little bit deeper than you can the child palette. I will say that the pigmentation on this brown and the brown that's a similar shade in this palette, this one is more pigmented, so that definitely helps as far as depth goes. But I do think that if you have this one, you don't necessarily need this. But like I said, for me, there's enough differences that I will probably, it'll just turn into a thing where I just use them together more than anything else. I like green shadow, so I'm not mad that I have both of them. The only shade that I think is maybe 100% spot on is the Intuition shade in this palette, and it's just a little Tatooine in this one. So that one right there. Those two are almost identical. When you swatch them, they look different in the pan, but swatched out, those are the ones that are like exactly the same. Other than that, there's enough variation that I'm not mad that I have both of them. So yeah, there you go. And this one is available on ColourPop's website. I will try and remember and link it down below. Like I said, I got the bundle with the Super Shocks because I have actually been using those lately. It's just a one and done kind of a shadow, so that's the only reason I got the bundle. But yeah, thank you guys so much. Let me know what you guys thought. Did anybody pick this one up? Curious to know. Make sure you're subscribed if you're not already, and hopefully I will see you in another video very soon. Bye everybody.